How's it going, guys? My name is Dead, and we're going to go ahead and talk about some tank steering today. Seems there's been a lot of confusion going on. Some guys don't have the understanding, maybe, I'm not really sure. But we're going to go through, we're going to break down tank steering in about as many ways as we can. And I'm going to do my best to try to explain it for you guys. Simplest to complex. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to toss it. Oh. Okay, so the first setup is pretty simple. 2 engines, 2 buttons. One goes left, one goes right. Okay, and that's your basic tank steering setup. Okay, so press one button, press both buttons. Oh, and this is the importance of why your engines must be the same level. Okay, so that's as simple as tank steering gets with 2 buttons. There's no reverse, no setup like that. So now if we want to add reverse, what we need is a 3rd engine. And we'll need to add another set of bearings. So we need to rip off our tires. We'll do pipe pieces just to make it look clean, guys. And when people talk about double bearings, this is what they mean. You have one bearing, a pipe, and another bearing. So for most tank steering setups, you're going to double bearing everything. Okay, so just like before, your front's still hooked up. And your back just goes to all of the secondary bearings. Okay. Make sure they're spinning backwards. So now what you have... Oh. Hook that up. Okay, so now you have your same 2 buttons that let you tank steer like that, and a reverse. Okay. So now we can take it one step further. Let's talk about turning and reverse while turning. So the next simplest way, and this is where 4 engines start getting put into perspective here, okay? What I'm going to do is I always lay out my engines, front, reverse, forward, reverse. Okay. And then we're just going to set up our home controls. In case you guys haven't learned this trick yet, if you go into your settings, go into your controls, I have remapped my 1, 2, 3, 4 to Y, H, G, J, okay, W, S, A, and D, up, down, left, right. Some people go W, A, S, D, or whatever, so your mapping might be a little different than mine. But just in case you guys are wondering how I easily control this, I'm not pressing 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm using Y, G, H, and J. But yeah, Yep, up, down, left, and right. Okay, so oh, I'm sorry, that's not this configuration. I'm thinking of the next step. Okay, so this style, this is 4 buttons, no logic. Okay. You got your 2 forwards, and then you got your 2 reverses. Okay, and I won't be using my control keyboard mapping for that. But basically, front to front, back to back, front to front, back to back. And I always like to make my outsides forward and my insides reverse. And it's just good to have some kind of system, because when you're wiring up a lot of bearings and all that, now you're looking at it and you're like, crap, does this go forward, does this go reverse, whatever. I just know my outside's always forward, my inside's always reverse. Okay, so now I've got my 1 and 2 to, oh. Okay, so I've got my 1 and 2 that do the forward, but I've also got 3 and 4 to reverse. Now you can mix them and get your 360 turning. But let's say that you don't want to have to switch, stop, and all that. Like, let's say you just like to hold the button, you just want to drive, okay? Now we're talking logic. And now we're talking about the easiest way is those to map the keys. So again, you know, I've got keys mapped up, down, left, and right for 1, 2, 3, and 4. So all I do is just up, down, left, and right. Okay. Now we're going to start talking logic, guys. Okay, and I'm going to make this as simple as I can. We're going to have 2 logic gates pointing forward, 2 logic gates pointing backwards, okay? Now, this one's responsible for forward, this one's responsible for backward. Let me put this on the left so that quits happening. Okay? The one pointing forward for the forward, the one pointing back for the back, okay? Now these 4 logic gates control these 4 motors and tell them the front, back, left, and right, okay? Forward, back, reverse, all that. So then at this point, all it takes is some simple thinking, okay? So when I go forward, I want... Alright guys, sorry about that. My computer crashed, or game crashed for whatever reason, not sure. Alright, so anyways, we're talking about our logic again. Okay, motor for reverse, logic for forward, logic for back, logic for forward, logic for back. Okay, so when we're going forward, we want to power the 2 fronts. Easy enough. When we're going backwards, we want to power the 2 backs. Okay, now, when we go and we want to make a left turn, okay, we want the left side reverse and the right side forward. Same with when we make a right turn, we want the right side reverse and the left side forward. Okay? So what this allows us to do now is now we have reverse, forward, and turning. If you remember to turn the engines up. I did. Oh, I'm sorry. Switch these from ands to ors. Okay. Because what it was waiting for was for me to press 1 and 3 to turn on one logic block, and we don't want that. We want it to work on ors. So now we've got our forward, we've got our reverse, we've got our right turn, and our left turn. The only problem is now when we're going forward, see how it's doing the forward and reverse, and it's locking one wheel? Okay. Now, depending on your build, this can cause major floppy wheels, because what we're doing is we're working this reverse bearing and this forward bearing against each other, and it looks like the wheel isn't moving, but if you were to just offset one of those, right, and then make a left turn, you notice now how the wheels don't look locked because they're being pushed around. Whereas if we keep it back at the normal level, oh, it's consistent. Alright. There's the wheel locking. And if we offset the engines, and I can press the right set of keys, you notice the wheel locking's a little off. And it doesn't lock up on the left side now. So that's why your engines have to be all the same size, and that's what's going on when you hit your reverse, is that this bearing is spinning forward and backwards at the same time. And you can see that with the logic gates that are double activated on the left side, or the right side now that I'm turning right. So, I'm a big fan of holding W. I just want to drive. If I want to turn, I'm going to turn, but I'm holding W for my gas. So, my controls work a little differently, and basically what it involves, we're just going to rip these back off so it disconnects them all, and we'll put them back down. Okay? Up, down, left, and right. That's how I wire mine. Now, instead of mapping your keys, you could also use like a WASD converter from a mod, or you can create something like this, which is just a simple WASD converter. What you would do is you would take this bearing, you wire it up, do like 30 degrees, put it on a loop, okay, and give it like a speed of 3. So now, and I'm just going to show you guys this real quick, okay. So when you hook a controller up directly to a seat, what it does is as long as you put it on loop, it'll do forward and reverse. Okay? So, forward, reverse, and naturally you can turn the controller speed up to suit, right? Then you have your left and your right. It's just a simple WASD converter, using just a few blocks. But you can slap that on, use that as a WASD converter. You can use like a mod or whatever. I use Fant mod myself, but it's all personal preference. Anyway, so then, okay, so forward is still forward. Back is still back. Now, here's the difference, is that we want to be able to hold forward and still cut power to different ones. So what you do is you change the ORs on the fronts to XORs. Okay? Now, we have to think about this a little more. We'll be cutting power to anything we're already holding. So we're already holding W, so these two will be lit up. So, by selecting 3, we want to turn the reverse on to turn left, right? We want to turn left, so we turn the reverse on, but we also want to cut power to the front. Oh, I'm sorry. I take that back. Sorry, guys. We're already holding W, so this is already pushing forward. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to cut the power to the forward and run the reverse. So with the XOR, this will cut the power with the XOR. Only one active if link triggers are active. Okay, so we're already pressing W. We're already going forward, and then like, okay, so we're already pressing 1. We're already going forward. Now we're pressing 3. 2 signals are going to cancel this out. We also take 3 and we run it to this reverse. And we do it to the same on the other side. Okay. Now we have just a normal OR in the back and an XOR in the front. Now what this allows us to do is that while we're driving and we want to take a turn, it automatically cuts it and allows it to do the full 360 tank steering, the turn on a dime. Okay, The difference with this setup is when you press only one side or the other, it runs both engines at the same time. But you also have reverse steering. Okay. Now you can make the reverse steering work the same way by also making it XORs. So if you're in reverse, now you can just 360. So it's not complex logic that you guys have to get involved. It's pretty standard, simple stuff. It's definitely the lower end of logic. Alright. The final way that I want to show you guys, we're going full modded here. And I'm going to use Fant mod for this, just because he's got extra stuff. But you got like all these fancy, you know, this is the basic vanilla setup that you want, like for advanced tank steering. 4 XOR gates, 4 buttons, in either some kind of configuration of mapping out your controls through the configuration, or with some sort of WASD converter. Okay. Fant has made this whole process much simpler. So for those of you using Fant mod, this part's for you. Alright. We're gonna get rid of all of that. Got 2 motors, right? Now I still use some logic. Don't need the buttons. Okay. Just a sec, guys, while I find these parts. It's kind of a list. You know what? C converter. Simple controller. Okay, so like before, I'm a big fan of using logic just to lay out my thoughts. So front, back, left, right, forward, reverse, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Difference is that we're going to take this simple controller that Fant has created. As you can see, connects buttons, switches, logic gates, blah, blah, blah. Okay, what this does is basically it allows something to accept a forward and reverse that typically wouldn't. Okay? So the way this works... Oh, and I forgot. You know what? With Fant mod as well, and this setup, we will not need double bearings. It's one of the advantages of this, is that it runs so much cleaner, so much less lag. Parts. Okay, so those of you using Fant mod, this is the way to go. Alright, no double bearings, just simple hookups, okay? Alright, it's already wired to the engine. Just make sure they're all going forward. Okay, so then the simple controller wires directly into the motor, and then each input wires into the simple controller. And it'll yell at you because the way the Fant mod works is that when you paint the logic going into devices, it can send different signals. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to paint the white one for your reverse. It might actually be forward. I'll figure that out in just a second. I usually end up repainting them about 3 times. But what we're going to do is we're going to start off. We're just going to put it where we can read it. Okay. So basically going to do the same setup, make them all XORs. And instead of all these funny converters or button mapping and all that, we've just got some simple WASD controls when we're going forward. Put that on. We're going back. Put the backs on. And then when we want to turn, if we're going to make a left turn, we're going to cut the power to the front, run the back, cut the power to the front, and run the back for a right turn. Okay. So what we have is we have a seat, WASD converters, and then into our logic 4 gate setup with the XORs. Okay. Then those are both go into the simple controller, and what these really do is they just avoid a second engine, second set of bearings and all that. It allows you to basically say, hey, this one's forward, this one's reverse, work on a switch and go. Okay. So then what you do is you go ahead, you can start driving. There's my W, my S. A and D are going to lock up because I'm not pressing W at the same time. So if I press W and D at the same time, we've got that 360 turn. Now I've got forward, 360 turn on my A, back, turn, back, and turn. Now you guys remember on the last setup, that was vanilla. When we backed up, it switched, but it didn't do it quite as cleanly. So that's basic tank steering, guys. In probably about what five different ways, I think. So really, it's you're only limited by your thoughts, and pretty much this is just the basic setup. So I hope this helps, guys, and I'll see you next time.